Jeff Brohm has given a clear update on one of the top position battles through fall camp.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome in to this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my 6th year covering the University of Louisville, 4th year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville, free and available on all streaming services, including YouTube, 5 days a week, your team every day. In his press conference on Monday, Jeff Brohm gave an insightful update on one of the top fall camp position battles, the wide receiver 3 battle. He mentioned 2 players that have sort of separated themselves from the pack. We'll discuss the team and coaching staff being able to get an extended look at all options early on in the season. We'll also take a look at another position group and explain why the tight end room might be getting overlooked a little bit by the Cardinal fan base. But first, today's episode of the show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. Card Nation, we are just days away. What is it? 72 hours? A little over, right? 72 hours until the Louisville football season officially kicks off 3 o'clock Eastern time. Against Eastern Kentucky at L&N Cardinals Stadium. We're preparing for that matchup. There will be a mailbag episode with some questions about that game tomorrow, and then we'll be in full EKU prep on Friday. But today I wanted to take a look at some things that Brohm said in his press conference on Monday. Now, of course, a lot of it was coach speak, which it tends to be in these offseason press conferences, but Jeff did give a pretty clear update into that wide receiver 3 battle, one that we've been talking about all throughout the offseason, all through fall camp, really just trying to see who's going to take that step forward. Now, Jeff Brohm was asked about the wide receiver room. That's a good position for us right now. I think Chris Bell and Colin Lacey are our 2 most experienced guys. Now, this is where it gets interesting. He says, TreyShun is a newcomer that has really stood out and has done a really good job. So him and Antonio Meeks will be at the other position and rotating in there quite a bit. That is probably the most notable thing that we can take away from his Monday press conference is we have sort of a clear look or a clear idea of who is going to get the first crack at the wide receiver 3 snaps. And honestly, you probably could have predicted this, especially with the former. TreyShun 482 yards last season for San Jose State on 28 catches, 2 touchdowns, 17.2 yards per reception, 6'2" native of Palmdale, California. He was a player that once he stepped foot on campus, immediately turning heads. I mean, the first day of fall camp, what happened? He had that acrobatic contort his body in midair to be able to make the catch. And he was just a guy that made plays all throughout the latter part of the offseason and in fall camp. So this is not something that surprises me. I've gone on record time and time again saying that outside of Chris Bell, I think that TreyShun is your only legit other speedster deep ball home run threat. You know, Colin Lacey can do that, but he's more of a catch the ball on those underneath routes and become a yak monster and then make big plays. Chris Bell is that home run threat. So is TreyShun. It wouldn't surprise me at the end of the year when we look back on the season statistics if Hurry leads the team in yards per reception. That would not surprise me whatsoever. Brian Smith, host of The Portal, national football recruiting analyst and football analyst for the Locked On Podcast Network, when I had him on an episode about a month ago, I would say, I asked him before the recording, I was like, who do you think is going to stand out the most? And he said, I've got a name, and I'll hold that name until you asked the question. And when I did during the episode, he said TreyShun Hurry. He said this is a prototypical Brohm type addition where you bring in a player from the non-power four and he ends up being a beast. Now, is he going to be a Jamari Thrash level guy? Probably not, especially not in year one, but he does have 2 seasons remaining. So we'll see what TreyShun Hurry is going to do this year. I think he's going to be one of those home run threat guys to where he might not get a ton of catches because wide receiver 3 the past 2 years was Amari Huggins-Bruce, and he didn't get that many catches, but I do think that we could see some stat lines like 3 for 100 and a touchdown, 2 for 75, 4 for 120. Like, I think that when he is going to make plays, they're going to be those wow factor plays. So TreyShun Hurry getting that, nod from the coaching staff, I think it's just kind of confirming what everyone thought. And you can't even really say that Hurry's like a diamond in the rough, underrated player at this point because everybody knows what he's done in fall camp. So it's awesome to see him continuing to make huge impressions, every single time that he steps foot out on that practice field. But TreyShun wasn't the only one that Jeff Brohm mentioned. He also identified Antonio Meeks as the other guy that's going to rotate in there at 6'1", 195 pounds. He's a little bit of a different profile at receiver, does a really good job of high pointing the football. Now, you go back to his stats from Division II Tuskegee, and he was also a big-time yards per reception guy. But I think that as Hurry is more of a deep ball threat, I think that Antonio Meeks, I don't want to just limit him to being a jump ball guy, but he's really going to specialize in those 50-50 passes. I think especially in the red zone. Didn't really get much run last year. 3 for 42 in a touchdown. And that touchdown came against Washington. 1 catch for 28 yards and a touchdown against Washington. Now, he has been significantly involved in the spring, in the summer, made big-time plays in the spring. I think he made some big plays in the spring game too. But another guy, he's just making plays. And truthfully, even with as impressive as Hurry's been, it seems like that if you had to sort of pinpoint one wide receiver that has, quote-unquote, won the offseason more than his peers in the wide receiver room, it's probably Antonio Meeks. He has gone from, in my opinion, to start the offseason, he might be able to factor into the depth equation to now it's how do you keep this guy off the field? And that's just the sort of the mantra that I'll keep, coming back to on this show. Something that we've brought up time and time again is that this isn't like years past where wide receiver 3, you were just hoping that someone was going to step up. Now it's you have so many qualified guys that are all showing out. It's just hard to get everyone ample snaps like TreyShun Hurry and Antonio Meeks getting this recognition. Yes, it's notable, but it also should be even more encouraging considering how well some other players in that room are performing. So Meeks, 6'1", ability to high point the football, that jump ball receiver, solid route runner, just uber physical. Isn't going to be that explosive receiver that Bell and Hurry are, but I think he brings a different profile of being able to be that huge strength guy, that red zone threat, that mismatch for smaller cornerbacks that are trying to check him one-on-one and really aren't able to do so because he does a really, really good job of catching the football, at the top of the route and being able to high point that football. So really like that we're hearing some names. I guess for me, if this was one of those situations where Brohm came out and said, you know what, everyone's doing good, we're just going to rotate in and out over the first couple of games and see who performs well. I would get it. But I'm glad that we've got some names to focus on because I think it just sort of shows you who is stepping forward, but also arguably just as important, it shows you who has some more work to do. And there is one name out there that I'm a little surprised that he's not mentioned more, but I still do think he's going to be factored into this offense in some sort of capacity. We'll tell you who that is. We'll tell you about almost probably all of the options getting an extended look through the first couple weeks of the season when we come back on this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Card Nation, today's episode of the show was brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments, you name it. When you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why Monarch Money is a thing. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. It's built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Like for me, with how busy my day-to-day can be, I sometimes forget about all those random subscriptions that I have. And then when I signed up to Monarch Money, I was like, oh my goodness, there's so many that I'm not even using. And I was able to take care of those, with the snap of a finger. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONCollege. Also want to take the time to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here. FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I like to bet. Sometimes I like to go with player props, the 2+ total basis for MLB. Sometimes I like building same-game money line parlays, or even kind of going back and forth with the strikeout numbers. The versatility is what I love because I'm just completely inconsistent. If you're ready to play, join me. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, $300 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. I have a request for you, Card Nation. Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. All you have to do, go to Locked On Podcasts, that's podcast with an S at the end, .com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's LockedOnPodcasts.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for helping us out. We're continuing this conversation just a couple of days before the season kicks off. It's a position battle that we have discussed probably too much over the past couple of months, and that is the wide receiver 3 battle. And Jeff Brohm mentioned that TreyShun, Antonio Meeks are separating themselves at the top of the group. But the good news is that playing Eastern Kentucky, no disrespect to the Colonels, but this is a game that should give you the opportunity to get an extended look at all of the options. So even when the starters, theoretically are getting pulled at the end of the first half or midway through the third quarter, at the very latest end of the third quarter, you're still going to see other guys get their opportunities. Now, will that same thing happen with James Madison? James Madison is a quality opponent, but if you handle business, it could be a blowout. So I'm not sure. Bowling Green, I think, will kind of be back to the Eastern Kentucky vibe, and you should be able to rotate guys in and out. So before you play that first ACC game at Pittsburgh on September 27th, you'll get a good opportunity to see these guys multiple times in game action. Now, there was one name that I'm pretty surprised that he wasn't mentioned along with TreyShun and Antonio Meeks, and that is ACC transfer Dakari Collins. Now, Collins, one of the things that I thought gave him an advantage was that he has spent 4 seasons in the ACC, 2 with Clemson, 2 with NC State. Now, at NC State, he was able to be a little bit more consistent, but 314 catches, 2 touchdowns in 2024. I think that a good portion of that is probably due to lackluster quarterback play with the Wolfpack. So I can't really fault Dakari Collins too much, and he's just a different type of receiver. 6'4", 215 pounds. Like, you've got your yak guys, you've got your home run threats, you've got your smaller receivers that are solid route runners. You don't really have a guy that has that size and physicality that Dakari Collins does. Now, Dakari Collins was an early standout in fall camp. So it's not like he's been bad. It's not like he has not lived up to expectations. Deion Branch said early in camp, those guys are doing good. They're doing really good. Talking about Dakari Collins and TreyShun Hurry. He says, I think me personally, they're a little ahead of schedule. So it's awesome to see that. But I still would like to have seen Dakari Collins get mentioned in that group. Now, maybe I'm just overlooking it, making too much out of nothing, stuff like that. We know how complex Jeff Brohm's playbook can be, but Dakari even said it wasn't overwhelming learning the playbook. I say just happy to have a lot of options, different routes, stuff to run, and give myself an opportunity to get open and get involved. So I think that Collins, with that 6'4" profile, you're going to see him still get some opportunities to excel, especially in the red zone and in certain situations. But another guy that I've had some people ask me about is Akron transfer Bobby Golden. Bobby Golden really hasn't been mentioned a ton. 5'9" receiver who had 31 catches, 446 yards, and a touchdown last year for the Zips, averaged 14.4 yards per reception. Haven't really heard much about him. I think that if he is going to be on the field, it's going to be as a backup slot receiver to Colin Lacey. In terms of skill position, truthfully, I think where you're going to see most of the impact with Bobby Golden is as a return man. 17 returns for 316 yards last season for Akron. I think that I am much more comfortable not having your elite stars returning kicks and punts, because there has been issues in the past of stars getting hurt. Jair Alexander, Quincy Riley, like, you want to make sure that your guys stay healthy. And I think that Bobby Golden has that, big time special teams playmaking ability that he can fill a role, because not everyone you're bringing in is going to play a key role. Now, if his number is called because of guys not stepping up to the plate or guys getting hurt, that's a different situation. But I think at the moment, until I hear more, until I see him show out on the field, I think that most of his impact this season is going to be from a special teams perspective. I've had people ask about Sean Boykins. Sean Boykins, it seems like he's making that transition over to running back, probably going to fill that all-purpose back role that Jalen Lucas filled against the Cardinals back in 23 before going to Florida State. So he might line up in the backfield sometimes. He might be put into motion, taking end around, taking end arounds to the sideline, wide receiver screens, just trying to utilize that explosiveness. But I don't think you're going to see him line up at wide receiver a ton. I think they're going to have certain packages for him. But even if he were staying a wide receiver right now, I'm not sure how much he's playing this season. There are two, former walk-ons that we're looking at, former walk-ons. Chris Hughes, 5'11", native of Morganfield, Kentucky, last season had 7 for 54. He was the off-season impact player in the offseason. Now, didn't really get much of a run, had 3 catches for 32 yards against Boston College, but still in his freshman season didn't give you too much. We'll see what happens in his sophomore season. Jaden King, rising junior, hasn't recorded a stat, but he could be a guy that's factored into the mix from Columbus, Indiana. One player that I really feel like could be on the under the radar train is TJ McWilliams, a player that Miller Moss and Chris Bell both said in ACC Media Day that he is being really reliable for Miller Moss. Transferring in from Minnesota, guy that Brohm recruited really well out of high school. He's from Indianapolis, but didn't really get much of an opportunity at Minnesota. So we'll see if that leads, or that confidence, that camaraderie, the chemistry that Miller Moss has with McWilliams, how much it's going to translate over into, the depth chart this year, how much he's going to play. I think that he's going to be the one guy that really, when you look back after the season, you're like, well, why did we forget about this guy? It's well, because he didn't really do much before Louisville, but I think that he ultimately could end up getting there. So that's the wide receiver 3 position. I do, however, feel like when we talk about skill positions that the tight end room is still being overlooked. And I think it's going to surprise some people, and it wouldn't surprise me if collectively the tight end room was better this year than any of the past years under Jeff Brohm. I'll explain why when we come back on this Wednesday edition of the show. Card Nation, first, I want to take the time to tell you about our friends over at Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. I know for me, I had a do-it-yourself home improvement project a couple weeks ago, and I realized that I didn't have all the supplies that I needed. And I was like, man, this is going to suck because I have to wait. Well, Supply House had next-day delivery, which was a game changer for me because there was no delay in finishing that project. So join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com. To sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Don't forget 2 more episodes this week. We'll have a weekly mailbag tomorrow, so get any final questions in. We'll also, on Friday, have a full, extensive Eastern Kentucky preview, guys. We are getting so close to the opening kickoff. It feels like Christmas morning is right around the corner. But concluding the discussion today, I do want to talk about this tight end room a little bit more because I think it's a position that is getting overlooked, partially because Jamari Johnson left, and also because it's a room that hasn't really produced a ton in the first 2 seasons of Jeff Brohm's tenure anyway. Like 2023, you really just kind of didn't have the personnel. Joey Gatewood ended up being your leading tight end receiver in that room. He had 9 catches, 150 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Kurisky had 18 catches, 141 yards, and 1 touchdown. And Josh Lifson and Dwayne Martin also had less than 60 receiving yards. You go to 2024, Mark Redmond, 24 catches, 256 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Jamari Johnson, before he got hurt, looked really, really encouraging, 13 for 158 and a touchdown. He had a season-ending injury during that Miami game, but it was Redmond, Johnson, and Kurisky. Kurisky, 112 yards, 3 touchdowns on 12 catches. I think that the tight end position is one that Brohm is, definitely factoring into the equation more and more. But as I had a conversation with Vince Lococo, one of the hosts of From the Pink Seats podcast at the state of Louisville, we kind of came to this agreement that, yes, there might be a statistical increase this season from that position, but because of all the mouths to feed, it might not be that significant. So truthfully, it's going to be one of those situations to where the tight end improvement is going to be based upon the eye test. Like, you're just going to be able to tell from the field. So what does that look like? Well, inline blocking is, of course, pretty key. Reliability, especially in the red zone, not dropping passes, getting open. I think there's a couple candidates, and it starts with Nate Kurisky, and he's been a guy that has patiently waited his time. He's patiently waited his time. Now, over 100 yards the past 2 seasons and multiple touchdowns in his first 2 years. Now the 6'3" native of Virginia is ready to rise into that TE1 role, which he's going to have. Every time his number was called, he answered. He answered the bell. And I think that reliability is going to trickle over to the chemistry with Miller Moss, and you're going to see him play a larger role. Now, will Kurisky have more, will he have a career high in yardage? Probably. Wouldn't surprise me if he's over 250. Wouldn't surprise me if he has more than 3 touchdowns. I think Kurisky is quietly going to be one of the best tight ends in the conference. And it might not be so quiet by the end of the season. But the reason why I'm ecstatic about this room isn't just about Kurisky. It's who else Louisville has on their roster. And one of those players is Jaleel Skinner. And Skinner transferred in from Miami, was a really talented guy coming out of high school. Just couldn't really put it together. He had 129 yards and a touchdown in his freshman season at Miami. Looked like the sky was the limit. Now, didn't really do much in his sophomore season, and then came to Louisville and had 1 catch for 4 yards in the opening game against Austin Peay. And the 6'5", 230-pound native of Greer, South Carolina, initially entered the portal. He rescinded his name. He came back, had a phenomenal spring. He was great in the spring game. He was great in the summer. And I think that that's just kind of the comfort of, understanding the role, understanding the playbook, and becoming more adequate of an inline blocker. He has a skill set that no one else on this team has. He's more of that receiving tight end, but I do think he's going to turn heads with how serviceable he is as an inline blocker, as an extension of that offensive line. So Jaleel Skinner can sort of maybe give you that mismatch that you were hoping Jamari Johnson was going to give you. Now, another player who is an interesting matchup is Jacob Stewart, who started his career out at San Jose State, or actually, I think it was JUCO, as a quarterback, transitioned to tight end. So he's still new to the position, 6'5", 230. His first year at tight end, 287 yards and 3 touchdowns for San Jose State, the Spartans or the Trojans? Yeah, one of the two. But he's a guy that could be that mismatch as he continually grows into the position. Not to mention all the other guys at the spot. If Davon Mitchell, redshirt freshman, 6'3", 260, high 4-star guy, sky's the limit. If he can put things together, maybe he could have a breakout year. Dylan Mesman, redshirt freshman, 4-star tight end, spent this spring banged up, but that rare blend of receiving ability, athleticism, speed, while also being a pretty serviceable blocker. I think Grant Hauser is probably a redshirt candidate this year. But outside of that, I mean, you have 5 options, right? You have 5 options of guys that bring a different big-time skill set to this room, and it's not going to be a situation where you have like a Kyle Pitts level guy or anything like that. But I think that tight end is going to play a larger role in this offense that people maybe want to give it credit for and want to believe because of the running back room and the wide receiver group. Like, I get it, but keep in mind, like, I feel like one of the main priorities of this offense is to get that tight ends room involved. And if you're able to do that, if you have Kurisky, Skinner, Stewart, maybe Mitchell, maybe Mesman, they're doing their thing as a group, being able to get open. I mean, think about how much pressure that's going to take off the rest of the offense and how much, more of a benefit that's going to give, because, I mean, defenses already have to respect the run, so they're putting a bunch in the box. But you also don't really want to get left on an island with Chris Bell and Colin Lacey, and especially TreyShun. And now what happens if your tight ends make those big-time plays? So I'm excited for the skill positions for the Cardinals. But don't forget to get your questions in for the mailbag tomorrow. That's going to wrap up this Wednesday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you back here soon. Go Cards.